Welcome to part 2 of the history of Green Bay. In this episode, we'll see Green Bay's remarkable growth in the 19th and early 20th centuries. After the Louisiana Purchase, the United States was poised to rapidly expand westward. But in order to build cities on the Great Plains, it would need sources of timber, and the white pine forest of Wisconsin was the answer. Green Bay's access by river to the forest and access by lake to the business centers of Milwaukee and Chicago made it a hub of transportation for timber. The city took advantage of all the timber passing through by producing enormous quantities of shingles. From 1860 to 1880, billions shipped out of the city. It became known as the shingle capital of the world. The area even became a kind of tavern paradise, where loggers would go wild and burn their earnings after the logging season like sailors on shore leave. The American pioneers of Green Bay were mostly Protestant New Englanders who founded some of the earliest churches in Wisconsin. The oldest Methodist congregation in Wisconsin formed here in 1826. Its current church building was built after the previous one burned down, which itself had been a replacement for one declared unsafe. Daniel Whitney, the founder of Green Bay, gifted this plot of land to the first Episcopal congregation in Wisconsin, known as Christ Church. This current hewn stone Gothic replaced the original building after it burned down. Green Bay's churches were generally hazardous. An interesting character associated with Christ Church was Eliezer Williams, an Episcopal missionary to the Oneida Indians. Williams led a group of Oneida from New York to Green Bay and built himself a house here along the Fox River. Williams then tried to set himself up as leader of a domain of Christian Indians, but after having a falling out with the Indians, settled for claiming the throne of France instead. He adopted the story that he was the lost Dauphin, the son of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. Apparently there was evidence enough to convince people. Contemporaries wrote entire books about it. He's now buried on Oneida land at the church that traces back to his original mission. Green Bay's favorable location was reinforced when the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad made Green Bay its northern terminus in 1862. This rail line is on the west side of the river, which at the time wasn't Green Bay, but the separate city of Fort Howard. The two cities were fierce rivals at the time, always trying to outdo each other. The Green Bay newspaper would occasionally print the score, that is, comparative city stats, that usually showed Fort Howard lagging behind in growth. So when the railroad came, Fort Howard finally got to flaunt it in Green Bay's face, and actually resisted Green Bay's plan to build a bridge over the river so that they could use the railroad too. While Green Bay went ahead anyway, funding the bridge out by themselves at Walnut Street. The east side later even got its own railroad from the line known as the Milwaukee Road. As railroads made it easier than ever to migrate west, immigrants from northern Europe came to the Green Bay area, attracted by the good land that was available. While the first Catholic church in Green Bay was the mainly French-speaking St. John's, new nationalities of immigrant Catholics branched off to form their own ethnic congregations, the first being St. Mary's for the Germans. Called the German Church, the architecture was based on a church in Munich. When the 15,000 square mile Diocese of Green Bay was created, St. Mary's became its cathedral and was renamed St. Francis Xavier. 1864, 47 Dutch families formed St. Willebroord's, Vince Lombardi's Green Bay church. A year later, the Irish formed a church dedicated to St. Patrick. After decades of reckless over-harvesting of Wisconsin's best pines, paper making became the main industry of the Fox Valley. Its factories began to specialize in paper products like tissues and paper towels, and Green Bay became the world's leading producer of toilet paper. For a brief time, it was also the world's leading cheese distribution city and had the world's largest pickle factory. These and other new industries led to a surge of wealth in Green Bay, and there is still plenty of visible evidence of Green Bay's vitality in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The choice location for the homes of the wealthy was the neighborhood of Astor, which is now Green Bay's great historic residential district. Many of Green Bay's most prominent families lived here, such as the Nevilles, after whom the public museum was named, because of their role in preserving local history. The first Neville Museum was actually an extension onto Green Bay's classical-style library that was itself built in 1903 thanks to a grant from Andrew Carnegie. This 1897 house in Astor was built using a mail-order house plan, complete with onion dome and round window, which the original catalog selling the plan calls tasty and becoming. I agree. Also tasty was the food served at the Bay Beach Pavilion, built in 1909 for the Coney Island-style amusement park. The pavilion had a dining room, dance hall, and roller skating rink. There are also some notable buildings from medical history. Dr. Julius Bellin, founder of Bellin Health, lived in this well-maintained house, now a B&B. In 1915, Dr. Bellin built Green Bay's first skyscraper for use in the medical field. Dr. Bellin, who died relatively young, is believed to still operate the manual elevator from time to time. Multiple hospitals were built in Green Bay. It became a prominent city in medicine. There was even a pioneering surgical operation that took place at St. Vincent's, when in 1923, Dr. Minahan became the first doctor in the world to successfully move a beating human heart holding it in his hand while he removed a tack from the girl's lung before putting the heart back into place. The early 20s was a big time for investing in the youth. Green Bay's East and West high schools were built, as well as this impressive YMCA structure. Its Tudor Revival stylings give it a fun pseudo-medieval impression. Never a bad thing. Across the street, the largest hotel in Wisconsin when it was built in 1924 was the Hotel Northland. And maybe the grandest sign of Green Bay's growth was its magnificent Beaux-Arts-style courthouse. While Green Bay didn't become the most prominent city in Wisconsin as Morgan Martin had hoped, it still has been a key city, largely thanks to the provision of the Wisconsin woodlands. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.